Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says the situation in Mexico remains fluid after the killing of Mexico's most wanted drug lord.
In my conversation with Foreign Minister de la Fuente last evening, he indicated that the situation should stabilize in the coming days and that this was a targeted operation which will not continue.
The violent response from the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, also known as CJNG, has Mexico on edge over what the cartel's next moves could be. For more on what could happen next, we are joined by Chris Dolby, senior analyst at Miami Security Intelligence and author of CJNG, a quick guide to Mexico's deadliest cartel. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's talk about the backstory here. El Mencho founded the cartel, what was that, 2009? How does this cartel's operation compare to other cartels?
El Mencho, for the influence he wielded on the international drug trade, is comparable to El Chapo and Pablo Escobar. He was a much more quiet, retired figure. He didn't seek the limelight like they did. But this is an absolutely momentous shift in the drug trafficking landscape in Mexico. The violence that we're seeing on screen now is a short-term reaction. This is the CJNG just showing that they're still around and they're angry. But that will be contained relatively quickly, especially in these big cities. What happens down the line in the coming months is anybody's guess, and we could be seeing a dramatic spike in violence.
How come? What happens then?
So El Mencho has ruled the CJNG for over 15 years with an absolute cult of personality. Every banner that they posted, every video that they made, they swore direct loyalty to him. There was nobody else. He's now suddenly gone. He does have a stepson, Juan Carlos, who is seen as the most likely candidate to take over, but there's been no evidence that Juan Carlos was groomed for office. So even if the other commanders agree that, okay, we'll follow Juan Carlos, can he keep this very big, very complex group united? If he can't, we're going to see this empire fracture into a series of smaller, violent fiefdoms.
Yeah, because I was thinking about, the other cartels as well, obviously, a lot of talk about this sort of instability, what that could mean for the other cartels. Will they look at the sort of the weak link that's happening here and try to move in?
Absolutely. The CJNG is a very curious beast because they're very wealthy and they're present across Mexico, but they don't actually control a lot of areas uncontested. They've never been able to completely wipe out these smaller local criminal groups, and they are absolutely going to try their chance to see if they can weaken the CJNG. And those are going to be localized battlefields for drug trafficking routes, for oil theft, for illegal mining, for extortion, and that's going to be a very complex landscape for Mexico to navigate.
What does this do to their drug trafficking capabilities? Because as we know, in 2025 here in Toronto, police linked this cartel to the largest drug bust in the city's history. So what could we be seeing?
The CJNG is a linchpin of the drug trade to the US and Canada. That's not going to change. You can't bankrupt a company by removing its CEO, and that's what's happened here. There are plenty of drug traffickers, of local commanders that run the operational side of that drug trade, the daily production, transportation, and sale of the fentanyl, cocaine, and crystal meth. That's still in place. Their capacity to produce drugs is not reduced, and of course, American and Canadian demand for drugs is not reduced.
Can the Mexican government prevent further violence at this point, like in the short term?
We're 3.5 months away from the World Cup, and the city of Guadalajara is a World Cup host. The priority for Mexico is going to be to show control in those areas. Puerto Vallarta is a tourist hub in Mexico. So in the cities, I would expect a rapid mass deployment of military and police units to stabilize the situation. But elsewhere in Mexico, in rural areas where people are not looking, where those criminal economies are centralized, I think we're going to see a rapid spike in violence. Now, that doesn't necessarily intersect. Millions of people visit Mexico every year and have a perfectly safe time knowing that cartel violence is a thing. But 3.5 months away from the World Cup, this doesn't look good.
Last question, Chris. In terms, we've been talking to Canadians who are in Mexico right now, the tourists that are there. I mean, with tens of thousands of Canadians are there right now. Does this cartel have, historically, do they target tourist areas or do they strictly stick out of those?
The CJNG is very present in tourist areas, in Puerto Vallarta, in Cancun, where they make money off the backs of tourists, but not directly. They're extorting the hotels, they're extorting the restaurants, the bars, making them pay a percentage of what they earn from the tourist trade. But no, traditionally, no cartel in Mexico systematically targets tourists because it's very bad for business.
Chris Dolby, we really appreciate your insight this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.